Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Toolkit Tuesday. Hope your new year's off to a good start. And I'm super excited about today's show and our wonderful guest. I'd like to introduce you to Laurel Miller with Seamless Events out of Portland, Oregon. And Laurel and I have had the opportunity to work together, her production company and our team, to work on a digital conference early last year. And I'm just super excited to have an AV pro here to share with us kind of what's happening in her world. And Laurel, tell us a little bit about Seamless Events and kind of your journey into event planning and event services.
Absolutely. So Seamless is an audiovisual services provider historically for in-person events. And we made the left turn, or is it a right turn? I don't know, into virtual events last spring. That seems so far ago and also so close now. And have done quite a bit of conference work, as well as like nonprofits and galas and awards type things. We have a studio in Portland where we can film out of, and we did a toolkit down there in the spring last year, which was really cool. And we also do remote recording and help with platform setup and development. So yeah, we've jumped in with both feet into the virtual world.
Well, I love that we have women at the helm of these tech companies. It just warms my heart. I'm the worst probably offender of saying, call the tech guys, and or we'll need to get a tech guy to do that. And I'm so happy that I'm having to change my own vernacular to say, get the tech women in here, the tech gals, the pros at this. So congratulations on running a successful, production company and being flexible enough to have your team and your actual venue facilitate virtual meetings. It's been, like you said, quite a transformation into supporting virtual events, but super critical. And I think one of the first things I wanted to share was one of my frustrations, even with live events, was having a client understand the investment in great audiovisual tools, teams, production support. They would get so focused on chicken or steak, and I would think, they're not coming for the chicken. You'll hear it if it's not good. You want to pick a good menu, but where you don't want to cut corners is on what people see and hear. I had clients over 30 years of doing this where they would invest $10,000 into having a super highly visible keynote, and yet not want to pay for a stage wash to properly light the speaker. And it was like this, voice coming out of this black void. So talk to me a little bit about why it's so important for event planners that are doing virtual events to make an investment in sight and sound.
Yeah, I think it's funny to hear you talk about your experience with audiovisual and how sometimes it's hard to connect the dots on what the value is. And we certainly see that, technology and equipment are sometimes hard to understand. They're a bit of an unknown, particularly with clients. And so it's pretty hard sometimes to explain what you're actually getting. And so we're so thankful to have planners like you that really understand it and know, value of it, and that can help kind of bridge that gap for the clients. In the virtual world, it's been really interesting. I would call it the rise of AV in a lot of ways. I would say in the past, if we didn't hear anything, that means we did a good job. Like, if the client comes back to us, a lot of times that meant something didn't go right. Normally, So, and if you get a compliment, you must have done something really amazing. And so in the virtual world, we're so much more front and center, and some are acting as the venue. And so, the main point of contact for the client. And so really investing in not just the gear and the equipment to make the end product look good, but in a team that you feel like you can rely on and that you have a good rapport with and you feel like understands your event is going to pay off hugely.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's interesting, well, two things. Being an educated consumer around AV products is is a constant learning process. I remember for the CMP exam, trying to understand lumens and this and that. And, again, over the years, I always tell the AV partner, I know enough to be dangerous. I'm trying to be an educated consumer, but there's a lot of that when you list on a proposal to me, when you've got the brand of the speakers or whatever it might be, that I don't really understand what it does. One of the things in having a great AV partner is being able to have a conversation around, okay, you threw your bid in here, we're way off. What is mission critical around sight and sound, and what is nice to have, so that I can make some educated choices? Because when I read the proposal, I don't understand what that does on the end. And then also, being visual learners, most people, if you show me good, better, best, and we have a call and you show me an example of this kind of spend with this kind of support, or the Rolls Royce of AV and how that can look and sound, I think that there's just a lot of education that has to go on, even for seasoned planners like myself, around what we're buying. It's like, I don't know, it's like buying a product you just don't know enough about to understand why we need a switcher. We were talking the other day about, we did a show on a GoToWebinar thing, and we were just like, where's our switcher? Because the speakers were coming in and they were like driving around trying to screen share. We were like, oh no, it's not a clean show. But just so talk to me a little bit about how event planners can be better consumers and working with you guys.
Yeah, I think two things, particularly in the virtual world, showing up with an agenda is so important. And also being ready and able to dive into the agenda a bit. In the virtual world, we need even more detail than what we would need in an in-person event. So some of the questions that we'll ask is, okay, this person is presenting for 30 minutes. What other media? Do they have a slideshow? Do they have video? Do they have, sound clips that they want to play? Where will they be located? Do you want to shoot them in the studio? Do you want us to send a camera? Is it a remote kit? How are you planning to do that? And then, do you want them to be live, or do they want to be live? Or do you want to pre-record? And then the second thing is a little bit of a feeling of the type of client that you're dealing with. So we are finding that a lot of the service areas where labor is added is really related to the type of client. So we had a client that we did some videos for that actually had us edit out the CEO's exhales. And so that was very time consuming, but that was the level of finish that they wanted to get to. And so knowing that level of expectation upfront will make all the difference in the quoting, and that was something that actually unfolded as the project went on. And so we were really, pushed for time to try and get it to where that they wanted it to be, because we just didn't understand it at the outset.
That's interesting. I would like to edit out all my ums and hums. I don't know what that would cost, but I'd love to be that slick with my presentations.
Right.
You talked a bit about some of the tools. Tell me a little bit more about your remote kits that you've been sending to speakers. So I've shared a story where we had a speaker that did it. They tested the platform, and they were in their home office with great Wi-Fi, and they sounded and they looked amazing. They had great lighting. And the day of the show, she called in on her phone from a sidewalk in Brooklyn on Wi-Fi from the cafe, but she was sitting outside, so not great Wi-Fi. And, she had her earpods in, and all I could hear was dump trucks going by on the street of Brooklyn. So it was a bit of a nightmare. So tell me more about quality control with your solutions, including the remote kits, how those work.
Right. Well, I think you're bringing up something that I hadn't even really considered before. Is usually the event planner bears the brunt of the concern of managing the people element, right? About, you might expect that somebody is thinking like, oh, I'm making a presentation, so I need to be at home in a quiet space and not have the kids around and have the right equipment.
Yes.
But when you leave the people element open, you'll get all kinds of responses. So that's a really good point. Like if you send out a remote kit and then you schedule a time, it's a little bit more intentional and you have more control. But with our kits, basically, we try to straddle the balance between having really good gear and have upgraded camera, have a lavalier mic that plugs into your computer so you can move around and you'll still be able to hear the audio, and we send 3 lights actually, so we can get some lighting behind the person to give some depth, and we can do a backdrop so it can be more standardized. And we tried to bridge the gap between having really great equipment that delivers the best end output and have it be easy for the end user. Because, again, the people element, we are sending kits to folks that maybe just using Zoom or getting on email is a little bit of a struggle. And so being able to plug in your microphone into a USB port, they need a little extra help, So
Yeah.
to try and not make it too complicated.
Yeah. And so for the planners that are watching, so what we're talking about is working with an AV, partner to provide your presenters an audiovisual kit that's shipped to them, right, Laurel? And
Yes.
It's got instructions in there, 1, 2, 3. This is how you get the lights turned on, and this is best practice for where to put the lights. And then do a test with them with, your team to make sure that the gear's all working, the mic works, all of that, so that when it's show day, they're ready to go. Is that
right? And we would prefer to record, in advance and then edit it together so that if they need multiple takes, or if there's an internet outage in a moment, or, so many things that can happen, that we can make it the best kind of possible output. So, yes, I'm always going to put in a plug for pre-recording.
Let's jump in there. We were talking about that a bit before we started recording. So let's jump in there. I've heard so much conversation around even the names of these events that we're doing. So like live, in person, semi-live, pre-recorded. There's like a new language that's cropped up around these things. But I have heard a case for the importance of it being live, virtual, but live at this, marking a day and time when we're having a discussion like this. And then I've heard and I've experienced all the pros of doing it pre-recorded for quality control, for ensuring that you capture the content and stuff. But so tell me, your preference as an AV production company owner is to pre-record as much as possible?
Correct. Yeah. And I think my experience has been that having some elements live is great for attendee engagement, and there are reasons to be live. And so, if you're giving an award and nobody knows who's getting it, that's a great reason to be live. If you're doing an auction, that's a great reason to be live. But, we've had a few occasions where we've done live streaming when it didn't need to be live, and the end output just isn't as strong. The person maybe is a little bit nervous at the beginning, or stumbles over some words, or takes a really long time to get to the point. And those are things that can be edited out. Like, it's a little bit more attendee friendly and more engaging to be able to put it into a really easy to consume packet for them to take. So it doesn't have to be live. If you want to do a Q&A afterwards and let the person answer questions based on their presentation, I think that's a good way of mixing in live without losing the benefits of recording.
Yeah, I mean, I had a show for 1,000 people, and we had a speaker from the UK, and he literally came into the Zoom room 1 minute before. 1 minute. We had tested and all of that. He was ready to go, but there was some kind of, I don't know what the issue was on his end, but we would have had an hour of dead air. I mean, he was a major keynote speaker, and we didn't have any content in the can. And, one thing when you have an issue like that, it's so hard because you can't really flip the whole schedule and just go, okay, if Bob's not here, let's go to Susie, because someone might have waited and they were waiting for Susie to kick off at 2:00. Right. So moving her up to 1 because you had tech issues is going to have a ripple effect and I think can create great customer dissat. You've got to stick to that. We have been talking as a team around putting some content in the can. If the client is insistent on live, putting some content in the can as like backup content or something like that. So we have something to show for that hour or that time slot. Have you done anything like that, or what? We
definitely talk to our clients about backup video or, something. What are we going to put up in case we need to buy ourselves some time? And that's also a nice reason to have actual video packets planned into your event, so that if it's a problem that doesn't have to be immediate, but needs to be solved in the near future, you can use the time that you created for yourself to be able to solve that problem. So I think that's really helpful. I think for me, I like a lot of times clients and speakers, they feel the like adrenaline rush of being live, and they feel like that's translating to the audience, that they're creating this experience because they're having the emotional experience as if they were in person, but it really doesn't translate on the camera. And so they're having that moment, but it's not coming across to the attendees.
So the pre-record, I'm with you on that. I think there's great value in doing that. I also think it's nice to feel connected to speakers. So I like the semi-live format, meaning if you're going to have a certain portion of your program that is a talking head that you can record and share a message or watch a video together or whatever that is, but that there is some moment that there is some live engagement. It feels like we're there together sharing this moment. Some like kind of some energy and momentum as a collective group watching something that's happening live. One planner that I know, she does everything live. She just believes that the pre-record is like, you might as well have a webinar and do it at any day and time, because it's not a stamp in time, right? It's not a live coming to you live. As we were both speakers at an event where we pre-recorded our message and then we were in the chat answering questions. I kind of like the idea of bringing those folks in live on camera. Some people have been really caught up in, we've got to have the same outfit and the same earrings and make it look like, I don't think we're fooling any audiences. I think you can have full transparency and say, for the best viewing, we've pre-recorded the speaker sessions, and let them know that. And I don't think that they really care, but I do think there is a value in the live element. So it's a challenge that we're all going to have to work through, deciding whether it's, and there's been these terms about a live event, versus in person. So is it a live virtual event? Is it a pre-recorded, in person? But as we move to hybrid, it's like it's an in-person event, but we're going to bring this person in with a pre-recorded program. So it's really in person, but we're not live. It's pre-recorded. So it's like trying to put all these adjectives together to fit what it might be.
Right. And you're right. Everybody is using the terminology differently. And so one person's idea of what hybrid means is not the same as the next person's idea. But I tend to agree with you. And that's sort of what I was talking about when you talk about parsing out your agenda even further, right? Because it's like, now you can't just say, okay, I have a 1 hour session with so-and-so. You have to say, okay, I'm going to come in. There's going to be an intro that's going to be live. And then we're going to go to the recorded presentation. And then it's going to be the Q&A, which is coming back live with the presenter, And so really understanding what all of those switches are. I'm with you too. I'm not trying to fool the audience. Yeah. And I think that actually this is a benefit of the virtual world that events are offering now, which is, if you're really interested in the content and they're saying something that's really cool or meaningful to you, you can pause and play it again and hear it and really take it in. And I know a lot of attendees are taking advantage of that and getting more out of the presentations because they can do it.
Well, and when you're watching a virtual event and you look at the viewer numbers, all this rich data analytics around the viewer experience, people are popping in and out. We had one show that they had more viewers after the event itself watching recordings than being there live. So there are a lot of different ways that people are taking this in, and it makes a case, I think, for good quality recordings can be really impactful. They don't have to be live to still get some great messaging. What are your thoughts on, as we go to kind of this hybrid scenario? I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring speakers that may never have been able to come into an in-person event because of travel costs or whatever. And also, there are clients of ours that have identified these ancillary audiences that will forever be joining remotely. They just probably will never take the time or money to come in person, but they want the content. So do you see that as a trend as far as just virtual or live streaming broadcasting still being a critical piece of these new in-person events?
Yeah, I expect that live streaming will become more of a regular part of an event and more of an expectation of attendees. I'm using the word attendee kind of loosely because it could be a remote attendee. But now everyone's had the experience of being able to attend a conference from the comfort of their home. And I think that's going to be an expectation. It's funny, we did live streaming for many years on in-person events, and it was sort of an afterthought for the planner. It was very low on the list. And so we would just do it, and nobody ever watched it or followed up with us or any, and now it's become of central importance, so we've all learned a lot in the process, and we've gotten better because of all of the attention and the thoughts. So it's really great. I think with hybrid, it's going to be interesting because in order to actually do a hybrid meeting, and what I mean by that is that there are in-person attendees and remote attendees that are consuming the same content at the same time. If you want to have interaction between those groups and you want to have, as you mentioned, like a speaker remote being beamed in and being able to interact with the in-person audience, it's as if you're doing two events from an AV perspective. And so it really does like almost double the cost. And so it's going to be select clients that are able to do that, where they're able to absorb the venue costs and the stake, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
as well as kind of the incremental AV costs to be able to do that. I like the idea of another friend of mine coined the term fusion, where it's a live and in-person event that gets captured, and then there's a separate virtual event after the fact that uses some of the footage from that live event or in-person event. And I think that might be a smart way to do it, to be able to deliver the content in the most engaging way, depending on the audience.
It's going to be so interesting. I've got so many thoughts about what you just said. One, I want to point out, we've got clients that have typically, well, let me start first. Live stream, you're right. It was always an afterthought because, part of that was financially driven. The goal was to put butts in seats at the top
Right.
ticket. And then if we have more that want to watch, we can monetize that. But it's going to cost a lot to do live stream. Are we going to sell enough virtual tickets to cover that investment? And they're finding again that they can expand these audiences to really cover that feature. But then you have the clients, and this is for true conferences where they'd have a general session and then they have 4 breakout rooms. Well, they never put audiovisual recording equipment in those breakouts. They just offered live stream from the main sessions I was looking at a bid the other day, and we wanted to record from every breakout because we want all the sessions on the virtual platform. Well, you're right. Now our AV costs are going up significantly because we're trying to record everything, broadcast everything, not just record it, but broadcast it. I also think I love the word fusion. And I've been, when people have said you have to plan 2 different events, I'm challenging our team to think about integration. So I would love to see a studio built in my venue, and those people are producing the virtual experience. And when all the people that were in the ballroom go out for a cocktail and start, networking, I'd love to have something cool happening in the studio. So still the people at home get, to experience networking online. Yeah. I'd love to be able to have the people in the room see a wall full of virtual attendees so they can come in live with a question. What does that cost production wise? So I think what's going to happen is we're going to get these wish lists of how we want it to be an integrated 2 ticket holders, 1 in the chair, 1 online on a device. And what do they get for that? And where are the integration touch points? How can they feel like they were together at some point during this 1-day, 3-day conference? It's fascinating when you look at what's happening and the ability to re-envision how these can happen with 2 different audiences.
Yeah, and definitely, I think you'll still have to choose which audience you're going to preference. And so that's going to, I think, drive some decision making where it's like, oh, well, yeah, I'm giving the remote audience a virtual experience, but it's just a wide camera shot of a little guy speaker on the stage and the screen, and they're not really in the experience. Or I'm giving them a true virtual experience where you get kind of the headshot and then the picture in picture, and they can really see what's going on. And if you do that, then the speaker can't move around a lot, and the in-person people suffer to some degree. And so you have to decide who is more important and who are you going to cater to. And I think that's one of the big challenges that, you know, we say hybrid and it's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. But when you get into the details, it's kind of like, I'm not sure that's going to work out perfectly.
Well, one of the solutions we came up with, because it was cost prohibitive to do video recording in every breakout, is to have that speaker go ahead and pre-record a shorter session that the online people, so they did it through Zoom or whatever their preferred video platform is, but they essentially videoed themselves, submitted the deck. And so for the virtual attendees, they got the breakout content, but they're just going to have to click on a video instead of being physically in the breakout room. So that was, I also heard a cool thing. I was interviewing a gentleman that does a lot of seminars, and he was talking about a remote camera called the Owl that was put like in the middle of his room. So there was no tech support. It was just all recording, and it was watching him walk around. So I think as new technology comes out, I always look to the AV partners, and you do a fantastic job, Laurel. For everybody here, follow Laurel on LinkedIn. Make sure that you get on her newsletters, because what I appreciate, Laurel, you're constantly sharing with us what's new, what's happening, best practices in that communication. And I look for that in a partner. You know, help me understand all the things that you offer so I can go pitch it back to my clients. If you don't keep me up to date. So when he was talking about this Owl thing, I'm like, I've never even heard of that. So, you know, is there anything else, any other new trends or new equipment, things that are really like you're thinking, ooh, this is cool. Anything?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that we just got some experience with that I thought was really cool. We did a sales kickoff for BuyAmp, and they do a lot of high-end kind of AV installs. And so they had this box that basically converted everybody's smartphone into a microphone. So you could sit in your chair and talk into your smartphone instead of having to get up and go to the microphone stand. And I really love this idea, especially if we're going to have hybrid events, because one of the things I've noticed, you're going to have a small number of people in person, and their likelihood of getting up to go to the mic stand is very low because they're able to have a conversation with the presenter, and then the remote attendee is not going to be able to hear what's going on. And so having this type of technology would allow for them to still sit in their chair and to have the remote attendee hear what's happening. So I think that's really cool. There's a way for that to work where all the attendees are remote, but it's not quite as developed as if the in-person people are using it. And so I feel like there's a lot of applications coming up, and that could be a really neat thing. I mean, we should be taking advantage of the fact that everyone has basically a computer with them in their
Well, you know, it's like when the apps came along, and so the conference had, you know, your signage of the agenda, but then of course now we have these mobile devices where people could get on the app and see the agenda. I remember when we moved from this aisle microphone to being able to, we use those catch boxes where we could throw it around the room and it had the cover. And now you're telling me there's a chance for every attendee to use their phone as a Q&A device?
Right.
Like,
I mean,
ask a question.
That's awesome. Everybody has it. So it's a great idea to be able to take advantage of that technology and to make it easy. Because like I said, some of our experience with the hybrid events, because it's a small number of in-person people, it's very hard to get to behave in a big conference style, which is what you need for the remote attendees to be able to hear and understand what's going on. So this seemed like a good kind of shortcut to be able to make that happen.
Super cool. I'm so excited to see all this technology coming down. I would like to talk a little bit about a fully produced event versus seminars, webinars. So I was following somebody on LinkedIn and they were saying, we did 600 events this month. And I literally thought to myself, wait, what? How is that even possible? Well, their definition of an event was about a 30-minute webinar, and they were doing like 4 a day or whatever, because I kept trying to do the math going, holy smokes. So I do think that in our world, for proper planning and for what we talk about with Toolkit, we're talking about an event, meaning it's not a team call of your staff. It's not necessarily, instructional training. It's not a webinar for training purposes. It's a collective, gathering. And so people have said to us, we just want to make sure it doesn't look like Zoom. It needs to look and feel differently on the screen. So one of the benefits of using a production company that I found that's been so critical is in the branding, the background, the how do you highlight the speakers, the lower third with their name, the fly-in, stinger video to break up and get people excited, the music that you can use, the in-studio production so that you have a host in studio and you feel like there is some kind of, again, physical presence happening at that moment. So thoughts on, I see that's all the value I see of using a production company, but thoughts on elaborating on that or just the capabilities to make it not look like Zoom or Teams?
I think one of the planners that we worked with said she had to transition from being an event planner to being a TV producer. And it really is that. It really is being very thoughtful and mindful of every second, every minute of what's coming across. And it's creating kind of the tightest package that you can put out with the least disruptions to the audience, with the most visual stimulation, and the least amount of disruptions. And that's what production can do for you, and we can add a lot of fun, like you were talking about, with music or with graphics overlays. So you just add to that visual and oral with an AU stimulation. And so those are the things that kind of make it into a more polished experience. And, it really respects the attendees' time and attention, that you recognize that there are a lot of things, especially at home, that they could be focused on or distracted by. And so that you're going to put out the extra effort to keep them engaged and to minimize the amount of time they have to kind of suffer through any kind of technical difficulties or slip-ups by the presenter or anything like that.
Well, I think it goes back to working with your partner to say, or with your client to say, what kind of level of production are you looking for? And let us show you some good, better, best. Let us show you how we just put a nice frame around it and you don't have anything fancy. Or do you really want the Rolls Royce and do you want it to be fully produced like the Oscars? I heard a great quote, because I've been using the same term about we're now TV producers, and this guy that was on a panel challenged it and goes, no, you're not a TV producer, or you would be running 60 Minutes on CBS. He's like, he was just challenging us to say, no, like these people have refined that skill of being a television producer for so long. But I do think that he agreed with the fact that think more like a TV producer in your engagement. Another thing that was interesting, I read and heard, I'm curious of your thoughts of this, about the virtual viewers experience when you're in a ballroom and you're in 500 seats back. The speaker's really small. Maybe you're using iMac, but the screen is really big, right? So you can see the content because you're in the space with the speaker, whereas they were saying it should be reverse in a device experience. When I'm viewing you as the speaker, Laurel, I want to see you as large as possible. Mm-hmm. And if you have some AV, it should be down in the lower, some corner off to the side, because I can always go back and look at the deck. But I don't know what the right word is, but the dimensions or the experience I'm having needs to be flipped on a device. I need to feel as close as possible to you as my partner that's speaking at the moment. And, we've seen shows, we've done shows where the speaker is a picture like this big in the very far corner. And then it's just this huge content heavy slide. And that worked when I sat in the back of a ballroom with 500 people and the two screens on either side were enormous and I could see his graph. Yeah. But now I'm taking this in like this, it needs to be more intimate where I need to be able to see the speaker, to see does that ring true to you?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, you're absolutely right. In the virtual world, having that human connection as best as possible and that eye contact is what will keep you engaged. But I do think for us, best practice is sort of shifting between speaker and slide only. And so you're having that change in what your eye is perceiving, which is really important. And then it'll link also to the content so that if you have a slide that's very heavy with information, that could be full screen. So you're not kind of squinting to try and figure out, or, a graph or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's something where you need to see the way that the speaker is looking or what kind of intonation they're making so you can have it side by side. And that's much harder to do live, right? Because you're asking the V1 to kind of mind meld with the presenter in the moment. And so that's a much easier thing to pull off when you pre-record, but you can have the best of both worlds experience where your eye gets to focus on the thing that's important in that moment. And so that's what's cool about virtual is you can do that. You can have that shifting perspective and, in person when you're sitting 500 seats back, that's the view you have.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I really hope that people take that away, which is what is the view for the virtual attendee and how do you maximize that experience now that we have this virtual, tool to bring the speaker literally up to, one of our events we did, there was a rock star, very well-known speaker, and she was just hanging out on the floor in her guest room and she was leaning up against, and she was talking about how she started her business. And I remember at that moment thinking you could never recreate this in a live event. If I was in this ballroom with her, I would never have this sense of intimacy with what she's talking about that is so insightful about her story. And she just seemed very casual. And, I just thought about all the stuffy years and years and years of events that we've done where there's someone in a tie on the stage. And, even on an iMag, you could see them, but they just felt like they were worlds away. Whereas now she just felt like she was in my office on my computer talking right at me. So I do think there's a lot of silver linings, and that's one of them, that ability to create a show that's super engaging and super intimate. It's made for me on my device, however big that is.
Right. I think that's so true. People will relax a little bit more when they're just presenting, into a camera where they're not seeing 1,000 people watching them back. I think that's a really good point. I think the downside of that is sometimes the energy gets a little bit low. And we always tell our presenters that they need to rehearse, and that then it's in their court to bring the energy. Our best microphone and our best lighting package isn't going to make you excited if you're not excited. So
it goes to the planners thinking about their presenters. There's been this whole conversation for years about subject matter experts being really obviously well-versed in a topic, but are they good entertainers? When you talk about putting on a show, are they entertainers in a way that they, speak clearly, they have high energy to keep people engaged? As I feel like many speakers on a live stage sounded like the Peanuts, classroom teacher. You just they just lull you to sleep with the same tone. And I really think that, investing in speaker training is important for big shows with keynoters. If you're investing, the professional speakers have done a good job at coming through the device, breaking that fourth wall. But some of these subject matter experts are, again, not comfortable with it. You and I were talking about that. We're event planners usually on the other side, but when you get on the camera, it's a different thing. You have to overcome that nerve and just seeing yourself and it's interesting to me. I think lighting is one of my biggest peeves. Even if you test it, I just feel like these people, I'm like, what are you looking at? You can see yourself. You have a halo of natural light above your head and I can't see your face. Do you have a lamp or something somewhere you can put in the front of you? They're selling these really cool clip-on lights. That's been a really awesome speaker gift that we've given, which just clips on so that any meeting they're doing, Zoom or anything, they have that front lighting that will help them. So anything else, just top peeve or top don't do it? like a fashion don't? Any other
Yeah,
tips?
I guess the thing that comes to mind, because we do a lot of pre-recording, is, and I don't know how to fix this, is the creating the sense of urgency for the presenter when you're recording them maybe a month before the actual show happens. And so helping them understand that like this moment that we're showing up to meet you to record is a really serious moment. You need to be finished with your presentation and ready to present. And I think it's just hard when you're sitting at home, and you're working on your presentation, but it just doesn't take on that real quality. And so we've been finding where we're having to kind of chase people around a lot more than what we expect. And then, they get it, right? I'm sure, presented in the past, but it's just because of the environment and the way it's happening, it seems like it's not really real for some reason.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I know for us, we have frustration with speakers chasing even just bios and headshots to put up on the event website.
Yeah.
And it's really, I tell my team constantly, like they have day jobs and they've agreed to speak, but they may not have a bio and headshot handy, which is weird in this day. I'm like, just pull something from LinkedIn, and tell them we're going to use this unless we hear from you. So it's almost like, this proactive, we have to,
right.
we have a deadline and we have to keep moving. One thing I was going to ask you about, I had this fashion event where the gal, and this must go to microphones, but the gal, we didn't have any heads up that she was doing like she was going to talk and then she was going to show a look, and she kept scooting back. So she was on her device and she kept scooting back to show the full length outfit. And she even was in her closet at one point and bringing out the next look. And what was happening is, like in this Zoom call right here, because they couldn't hear her camera wasn't being activated. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I guess one question that I had for you is, like, if you've got people that are standing, walking, moving away from a device, is that a lav mic that needs to plug into a device to help you accommodate any standing, moving people?
Yeah, I would say best practices is to not do that. Right, because the experience for the viewer while you're moving backwards away from the camera, it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
And we like to have like microphones to be attached to the computer so you aren't losing any sound quality or, dealing with any interference from another Bluetooth or something like that. And so there's a limit to the cord length. So I was thinking about that while you were talking about it. Yeah, it's just, really the intimacy of the virtual experience is being up here. And if you get out of that or you move around a lot, it's like watching ping pong, like, where are they going?
That's true. You could have taken a picture of each look and put it up on a slide, right? She could have been like, here's me, and then make sure you wear the blazer this way, and then showed a picture of her in it as a kind of
right. That to me is like a testament for editing.
There you go. That should have been pre-recorded session. Yes.
Exactly. That we could have taken out all the like running around and going to the closet and all that stuff.
Well, and when we talk about being TV producers, I've been trying to get my clients to think about the segments, storytelling, just the basic, best practice for storytelling, a great intro and take them on this journey and a climax, then end strong. And so storytelling, but also thinking of it in the different segments. So think of you as the viewer. I want to see and hear something different, right? To keep me engaged. And so is this segment, when you figure out what your agenda is, it goes back when you said planners being ready with their agenda. Is this piece of the agenda best told by a video? Is it best told by a pre-recorded session? Is it best told by an MC that live out of a studio? Like understanding what you want to communicate, and then what's the best tool? Is that a solid strategy to think through the agenda and then think about the best way to?
Yeah, I really think so. And I also think, there's this trend in virtual to doing shorter sessions. And that has to do with attendee engagement, right? Like how long can you ask somebody to sit in front of a Zoom call? But also the medium allows you to get more information into a smaller amount of time. And it's sort of up to us to take advantage of that to its fullest. And it's hard and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of pre-planning. And so, you know, as much as you can do to kind of pull together those elements. I mean, I loved what you were saying about how do we best communicate this? Maybe it's a separate little video vignette that does this in 30 seconds, but it takes me 5 minutes to explain it.
I think it's also going to the technical partners, the production partners around, like what used to happen on a stage, you know, that could they just walk up and then something's happening. Some of that, when we talk about the best way to feature it, is making a separate video ahead of time to showcase the 5 winners, right? Or, you know, we had an event that had the best office. So to go ahead of time and put cool music and infographics and make a super cool 3-minute video instead of having these people stand there on a stage. It's now, so then you've got, when you talk about cost, now you've got to put in your work back schedule, production time for that,
right.
Cost to go shoot the content, and then the editing, right? To make it really a cool 2 minutes versus them just walking on the stage and showing something on the stage. So are you guys seeing a lot of pre-event production with developing
Yeah, I think
content?
You're right. It is a question of budget and also your willingness to allow your attendees to have downtime or less than the most optimal experience, right? And those things, there's some balance in between of like how much you're willing to spend versus how much you're willing to have your attendee kind of wait while you queue up the next thing or whatever. I think there's also a little bit of it's hard to let go of being in person, and we all remember that and we all love it. And so that feeling of having the award winner walk up and having the walk it up music and, you know, this pageantry, that it doesn't translate well in the virtual world, and being willing to let go of that thing that was so special and do something different. I think, you know, it's a hard thing to do.
That is such a great point, Laurel, because I have definitely, when I've been talking to the people who are transitioning to virtual, I ask that question, is this like a sacred cow, or does this translate? Because maybe there's a different way we could showcase your 5 winners that we've never thought about because we have new tools. And then they start like, what do you mean? And then you like can show them a sizzle video of like, see, we could do this, and we can have them each come on live, put them on the screen, but also we can do a little backstory of each of them on video ahead of time. I think that working with a production team who has been in the business of lights, camera, action for a long time it was always critical because you were our show. You know, if we went into a ballroom and the lights and camera didn't work, we were not in action mode. And I think it's deeper even now, the connection with these production teams to collaborate and say, this is the agenda item. In this, you know, Tuesday afternoon, we're going to do a whatever party. What have you seen work around that kind of a segment format? And what would we be looking at if we wanted to do a 2-minute video? Is it an extra 30 grand? Can we do it, you know, to really kind of understand the capabilities, the costs, and, you know, kind of how we collaborate. I mean, I think it's capabilities, costs, and the collaboration around let's do something cool and different on the small screen for this virtual piece.
Right. Yeah. I mean, AV has always been mission critical, right? If you can't hear it or see it, did it even happen? But in this day and age, we've become so much more strategic partners in helping to guide people through the production and getting down from an agenda to a run of show to a queue to queue, you know, and really what that level of granularity and helping them think through, okay, this is actually how I want my show to run, and envision that when they haven't done it before, you know, so they're really relying on us to help them walk through, and people like you have done it now so many times. You know, we were all building the plane and flying it at the same time, but now we have some experience under our belts.
Oh, for sure. I really appreciate your willingness to partner, your thought leadership, you know, your team's capabilities. You have a fantastic team definite plug around working with Seamless Events out of Portland. Their team is fantastic. A lot of, seasoned pros that understand the technical part, but also the customer service part. And I just want to thank you for your time. I would love to figure out a way to get our Toolkit, community some resources. I don't know if you have I'd love to see a great sample of your ideal run of show, and what are those columns and what are those details, and kind of show me a best practice of that. So if you're open to that, maybe we can collaborate on a joint post in LinkedIn or something showing some cool tools to make us better planners, because we need to up our game with you guys and at our side. So great job on what you've done. Commend you on hanging in there. As business owners, both of us, we talked, I think March or April, when I was in your studio, about just hanging on through this. And I know, unfortunately, there's been a lot of people that have really struggled to stay in business. And so as a women business owner to women business owner, thank you for, staying in there and continuing to innovate and, figure out ways to allow us to gather. So thank you so much. Any closing comments on how they find you, or?
Yeah, our website is seamlessevents.com. We're on all of the social medias. You can find us there. And I'm personally on LinkedIn, Laurel Miller. You can find me if you want to reach out, and we can connect. But I just really appreciate what you're doing, Lynn. It's such a great platform, and I've learned so much from your toolkits and your willingness to share your experience. So thank you for letting me be a part.
Oh, you're a rock star. I really appreciate your time today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll be in touch and continue to provide some great shared content and learn and grow together as we keep moving. So thanks so much, Laurel.
Thank you. Bye-bye.